Welcome to Charlotte, North Carolina, America's least interesting major international airport. That is Charlotte in the background. That is the old Nations Bank building. I don't know what they're calling it now. I think probably Bank of America. It is actually a very beautiful building. But we are mainly here in Charlotte to go someplace else very, very close, and that is up in the mountains to a little airstrip called 2NC0, which is Mountain Air. And Mountain Air is a tiny, tiny little strip, 3,000 feet long, 4,400 feet up in the mountains. And let me just show you what it looks like, because this is going to be a real dilly. So we are going to take the world's shortest trip here from Charlotte. We're going to fly to the northwest, and we are going to come right past Mount Mitchell, which is one of the tallest spots in North Carolina. And we're going to land on this, on runway 32, right there on the side of a mountain surrounded by a golf course. Now, I know what you're thinking. If we lose power, of course, we can land anywhere here for free. We don't necessarily have to hit there. There's a bit of a dog leg on 11 right here, but 17 looks good enough. No, as a matter of fact, this is really unforgiving terrain here in the Pisgah National Forest, one of the most scenic places, I think, in the country. I used to work down in Charlotte, and we used to come up all the time to fish and camp, and it's just, I mean, it's just damn nice. So we are going to head up that way, and it's about a 20-minute flight, and the real challenge is in the arrival. I had to build some custom waypoints, as you can see here. The airport itself was not in the database, so I had to build a waypoint for that, and then build 2 waypoints on a 10-mile final, and gave them some altitudes, although we're going to have to do a little bit of dancing around the mountains. And with that, there's not much more to say, except that we should be in go-around mode. The way you get that mode to display is you click that thing here. I've got it bound to a key on my joystick, and it will display climb bars. We will put ourselves in LNAV mode. We're already trimmed. Everything else is set. Our V-fry and our V-climb are wrong here, but we won't bother to fix that. That's from a proving run that I did trying to land a few moments ago. We're just going to light the fires and get going. Looking for 80, and we're going to have it. Looking for 121, and we'll have it in a minute. It's actually going to be a little bit less than that because we are a few hundred pounds of fuel lighter than we were a few minutes ago because of this practice run I did, and we'll just immediately turn onto course. I know from memory that our V-fry is about 148. So bring our flaps up. Our next milestone is 1,700 feet when we'll pull the props back. That's 1,000 feet above airfield elevation, by the way. And we got it. Pull them back to 900. At that point, we will also turn our pumps off. And our standbys off. Ourselves in IAS mode. It's a decent climb speed. Briefly pop on the autopilot. Come down here, turn off auto feather, come up there and turn our bleeds to normal. I'm just going to keep the lights and everything else on because it's going to be the world's shortest flight. Turn off our anti-icing right now. It's just a remnant of the last flight. Having cycled those, we're going to close them. Those are the engine intakes, which actually, ironically, are more like trash chutes. What those doors are doors in the engine intakes, which open downwards so that if you get any ice on the engine intakes, they'll come sort of chunking out and they'll fall out that chute instead of going into the power section of the engines and banging into turbines and things like that. We're going to be pretty low on fuel when we get there, but the objective is not a commercially viable or realistic flight. Instead, I want you to see the scenery, and I want you to see the kind of arrival we're going to do, which is going to be absolutely maximum performance, minimum energy. We've got zero lateral clearance, zero room to float. Going to get on the runway as soon as possible without bouncing. We are not going to grease it on. It's going to be a firm arrival, and we're going to get our nose down, get on the brakes, and get on, actually reverse props, which is rarely used in the dash except on wet, otherwise contaminated or non-standard or very short runways. Because generally speaking, it's not needed. All that's really needed, as I pull the props back to 850, all that's really needed is beta. In other words, all that's needed is for the props to flatten themselves out into a minimum flat, draggy pitch and not anything more. Alright, so we'll set up a VNAV descent right now, and we'll go to MT7, which we've designated at 8,500 feet, and that's purely our own creation. Alright. It's going to be a non-standard glide path, give or take. The whole thing is going to be fun. And again, we've got, I'd say till descent, we've got about 15 minutes. And that is all. I believe this is Route 321, unless 321's over on that side, and I believe this is I-26. But these are just the sort of central Carolina flatlands and foothills. In a second, we will get into unbelievably drastic terrain, or at least drastic terrain for the East Coast, or the East, as it were. This part of North Carolina, as we get just a little bit off to this side, is the Piedmont. And just like in Italy, Piedmont means foothills, or foot of the mountain, actually, technically. Unlike the Piedmont in Italy, it is not known for its fine red wines. However, it is known for its fine brown whiskey. And often there is not tax paid on said whiskey, thereby making it moonshine. Moonshine, by the way, does not have to be a lousy whiskey. It is merely whiskey that nobody has gone through the legalities of paying the feds for. And that is also the origins of NASCAR racing, which is big in this area. And that is if you were transporting said whiskey and you were being chased by said revenue agents or revenuers, you wanted a car that could get away. So souped up cars were the rules. Tricked out cars were also the rule, which is also where the NASCAR tradition of, let's see, how do I put it, careful and colorful exploitation of the rules comes from. You would have a hopped up Dodge or Chevy, and in order to evade people driving at night, you wouldn't just have the normal headlight switches, but you might have taillight switches. You can keep your headlights on, but keep your taillights and brake lights off, so the guy following you didn't necessarily know where a corner was, but you did. And you might find yourself getting away around that corner. Well, said federal agent ends up plowing into a ditch because he didn't know there was a turn there. All kinds of stuff like that. So there's a lot of history around here. There's also a lot of very good barbecue, especially to the east of here. And because this is such a scenic territory and because there are golf courses every 2.5 feet, there are small airstrips all over the place. If you get to the north and to the east of here, you're in tobacco farming country. Right coming up here, we will be really just coming up into scenic country. And it's a tourist destination, and there are mountain cabins galore up here, and fish camps, and camping grounds, and a lot of bikers and a lot of bicyclists too. And it looks like the weather could be a little spicy. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to save this situation. Because if I screw this up, I don't want to have to refly this whole flight for you. Well, you're seeing this because I screwed up at least a little bit. As promised, I'm telling you that. We made our approach and we actually landed safely at Mountain Air, but we did it in a kind of unorthodox fashion. I descended a little bit too low, and I descended one mountain ridge too soon. And bottom line is what that meant as we turn on our anti-icing right here. What that meant was I pretty much climbed to the runway. And I think you're supposed to descend to the runway. So we're back, coming up on top of descent here, and we're going to do it upright this time. Those are the beautiful mountains coming up. We're just flying over, I think, Rutherford County, and we've picked up some ice, just briefing the arrival. It is going to be flaps 35, props max, and I think, as I mentioned before, we set up some custom waypoints, and those are there: MT7, MT4, and then MT Air, which is our strip. And what I did was, between MT7 and MT4, or just immediately after MT4, I panicked and I thought that we were too high, and I did not realize that we still had one more ridge to go, because we got low enough that we could no longer see the strip, and so we kind of lost our situational awareness. It was not a bad arrival, though. I will say that. We touched down on center line in the touchdown zone, nailed the speed, and managed to stop right next to the country club swimming pool. And I don't mean we rolled off the runway. and hit the swimming pool, but the strip actually ends in a housing complex, sort of garden apartments and a swimming pool. So go figure. That I do believe is I-26 right down there. And we are how far from top of descent? Let's see. 6 minutes from TOD. And you see right here, between MT7 and MT4, we're going to have a considerable rate of descent. But I actually don't want to use it all up in this segment because, again, we've got that final mountain ridge to contend with, and I want to still be able to see the airfield, such as it is. As you'll see in a minute, it is going to be a little bit, well, everybody says challenging when they mean hard. It's going to be frickin' hard. Challenging is the Tuesday crossword. Hard is this. Set our landing altitude for 4,300 plus 500 is 5,000. And we'll leave our ice protection. You know what? It's not going to hurt us to leave it on, so let's leave it on. I don't think it's going to have a bearing. This is the river that snakes into the area. Just checking our fuel. We've got an hour's flying time, so if we have to divert to Asheville or to Greensboro or Winston-Salem, we can do it. Actually, yes, this is the river that comes into the area. I believe that's the Cane River, but I'm not sure. And our altimeter is very important here, and it should be 3023. 24. Is it 24? It says through 23, but yes, 23, and I think they've got an automated weather observation system. All right, altimeter set. Bleeds can come to min. We're going to start to slow down because there's absolutely no sense in screaming on into this. And as I think I mentioned before, we're going to have this VNAV profile, but we are not going to slavishly follow it because there's actually a little bit of terrain, as you'll see, that we are going to aim for. That will help us in our quest to hit a runway properly. And I really want to make this a proper approach instead of a climbing approach like I did before. As fun as that was, and it certainly was. I'm also keeping our GPWS on because despite the little annoyances, I would rather have it on than off. I'd rather hear the warning than be annoyed by it getting a little jumpy and telling me to pull up, because in this case we kind of want to believe it. And what's different on this flight is that some weather has crept in, which might not be good, because we have to see our terrain. We might just have to do it by distance, just from memory of where the mountain was, and that could be a little bit fun too. Just make sure I'm scaled down to the max. I am. And that we are otherwise configured for landing, and we are. I am going to keep the ice protection on. And this is again going to be a props max arrival. We will use reverse props as well, which is kind of rare. Just doing a couple breathing exercises here. Pose I'm in, I believe, is the barfing pumpkin, in preparation for a Zen arrival. You gotta admit, it's pretty damn beautiful here. I would hate to hit this terrain. Now, as you'll see in a minute, we will abandon our VNAV profile, I want to say just shortly after here, and we're going to aim for a mountain notch. We're going to get fairly low there, but then we're going to make sure that we're high enough that we can get over the next ridge without too much difficulty. I'm keeping our energy fairly low, and you can see from our last video on unusual attitudes and a couple videos before that on landing technique, I am more often than not flying pitch instead of speed. Pitch and picture, especially on final, because if you've got the pitch and the picture right, it means that your speed is right, and the speed is an output. It takes care of itself in a way. But as we do the initial descent, I will be, with an eye on the terrain outside, I will be flying power and speed. And we do need to be in VNAV mode. There we are. And so as we capture, since there's no sense in unnecessarily building up speed here, we're going to bring our props to full for the most drag. And we're picking up some wind off the hills, aren't we? The thing I'm going to do is look over here, and we are going to actually be coming over that ridge right about there, give or take. Maybe a little bit to the west of it. And again, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge to see the field because it's just carved into the side of the mountain, and it's very small, very narrow. So we're on about a 9-mile final right now. We'll put in our first notch of flaps. We'll drop the gear. Let's get ourselves lined up here. That is the strip. Okay. We are not going to lose that strip, and I'm just going to fly the airplane. Because what I did the last time around is we hit that lower mountain ridge. You see the one with the patch of snow, the next one over? We lost sight of the field, and we were too low, and all of a sudden nothing in the world looked right. And as you can see, we're going to lose the field in a second. And man, are we getting hammered coming over this ridge. I hope it gets better on the opposite side. Now look for the wind to kick us into a tailwind as we come right over this. It's a little bit of a headwind now. Alright, I'm going to bring in the rest of our flaps. Alright, now that we're over this ridge, we don't have to drop drastically. We're going to fly this as a visual approach.
1,000.
We do have the strip, and we're going to land on it just like any other runway. The difference is there's going to be absolutely no margin of error. Okay, flaps 15. Feed in a little bit of power.
2,500.
I'm just trying to keep it, I'd say, about this distance on the windshield. I may revise my estimates. Don't want to get too low. Bring in our final notch of flaps right now. And we're just going to keep it as close to the same position in our windshield as we can. Again, we really don't have a whole lot of margin for error. I'm going to bring us down a little slower. Now remember, we're in flaps 35, so we're going to be descending at a steeper pitch angle than at 15, so our picture is going to be different, and we really need to account for that. So, in a second we'll have to bring some more power in, but right now I'm right dancing just below our
1,000.
V app, and I'm going to bring the nose up a bit now and flatten out this approach. Bring in some power, and we're going to drag it right over the top of this hill. Come on over this way. I'm threading the needle between these trees. We're going to come off the power very quickly.
500 plus 100.
There we are. Off the power, on the brakes, on reverse. And welcome to the patio. Welcome to Mountain Air, where there's a guy walking through the grass. Maybe he'll come out again. Don't know. Yep, here he comes again. Look at this guy. Okay, well, some people like to swim, other people like to take dirt strolls. And there he goes. Anyway, you know what to do. Press like if you liked it. Don't if you don't. Subscribe if you want to see more. And thanks for watching.